Hey everyone, let's have some fun with the March Kitaholic Kits. So I decided to use this paper here and some random photos of one afternoon. Now I used my finger there to go, yep, I roughly want up there about 3/4 up the page. And as I was ripping, I doubted myself a little and went a bit lower. And I just really wanted it up there on the 3/4. So I'm trying to see if I layer a piece under here, whether I could piece it together and make it look like it worked, but in the end I decided not to and change the game plan. So I'm just going to move it down where it's going to sit there, and I'm just going to work with the photos. So I've got 3 that are in the vertical vertical orientation, and then the one with Patrick on his bike is horizontal. And I thought I could make it work, be a bit quirky, and it just doesn't sit well for me. Got 2 photos of Oliver and as you do when you're kids, just having fun with all sorts of crazy things. So I've cut it out with a little bit of white border around each of them, and I'm just trying to work out how they could fit, but it's not going to work. So instead I end up just keeping the 2 photos with Oliver in the box, even though I do give it a try, because I thought it'd be cool to have these 4 little photos along here. Then I decide, okay, what about just the 3? But then I'm just not liking the difference in the photos. And so I'll just leave it there for now, and I'm just going to work on this little cluster up the top. So I cut down a little, like make it a fishtail banner. I cut in the middle, and then I'm going to rip to the edges. And I try and make it work and cut a little bit bigger, and it's just not. It's not what I wanted. So I just turned the paper around. Well, that was a good little bonus. Try again, cut. This time I cut that edge and then distress it, and that works much better. But it's still not very easy. So the left side, which was the harder side for the first time I did it, so I don't know why I did it this way. I instead just cut the tiniest bit as a guide and then rip it, and it works not as neatly as I would have thought, but I guess it's a bit big, so that's why it's not just a straight cut. But having that distress look make it look much better. So I'm just going to use that same paper there to border behind it, to layer behind it, I mean, and that's going to be the background so far. So this is all I've got worked out, is that I wanted to have that little rip up the edge to counterpart the bottom part of the pattern paper, some orientation of these photos that I've got. So just using some washi tape to stick this down, just because it was a little bit easier than mucking around with some double-sided tape. And I'm just making sure that's when I made that piece small enough to back behind. So off it goes. And then I'm going to work on the rest of it. I just really love this paper. It's just so nice. I might have to get myself another sheet or a couple. Isn't that funny? I think we hoard paper pretty easily when it happens like that. But it's like, oh, it's nice. I need a few of them. There's millions of things I'm going to do with it. Anyway, so I'm going to pull out these frames. So I've decided just on the 2 photos, and I'm going to see if the frames fit the size that they're printed on. And I found this blue one, and then I try a few of them, but they're all different sizes. So even though I'm trying to make the others work and think, oh yeah, I can fill the empty space down the bottom here of the frame with some embellishments, something, ultimately I decide that's not going to be the direction I take. Instead I found this one, which is the same size as the blue one, and is going to work marvelously. It just adds a little pop of difference behind each photo. It's like putting pattern paper behind it, but something a bit more detailed and a bit textured because it's got its chipboard. I'm going to use to just put a little outlines underneath where it is, where those frames were sitting, and then I'm going to do some mixed media. So I'm going to go over top of the pattern paper, and this is my plan. So I go with the stamp pad, and then I literally move the pattern paper out of the way to stamp, and then I'm like, what are you doing? Glue down the pattern paper, and then you'll be able to go over top of it, and it's going to look a bit less what is it? The page protector. And I'm really loving, I've got a couple of sizes of double-sided tape now. This is a really nice, so it's nice that in that respect. So on it goes. Why is this taking so long? Is my software having a conniption? Okay, so you can see already it's covered up some of the mixed media, so I need to keep continuing on with it. So I'm just adding a dab of the colour from the Distress Oxides that we got in the mixed media kit, and I'm just putting it straight on just because I want that depth of colour. Now you can see on the pattern paper it sucks it in a bit different to the cardstock, so it does give us a different tone, but that's okay because the fun of mixed media is different tones. So I'm going to add the blue into the little palette that we also got in the mixed media tray, and that's so I can use it with the pipette to get it in a spot that I like. And did you see that? I had blue on my finger, just touched the paper and got a smudge of blue, so that was lovely. I end up using the ink pad, the stamp, what are they called? Stamp block, to spread out that blue. On it goes, just using a baby wipe to clear up some of the excess so that it's not crazy, and I'm just watering down so that there's a little bit of different shade because they are Distress Oxides. If you give some water to it, it's going to look different, but also it makes it like the water makes it go further because they are quite pigmented. It doesn't take away the strength of colour, so it's really nice in that regard. So I'm going to add some of each of the colour into the palette and work with it that way, adding the splats with the pipette, making sure that the blue and the orange don't mix because they give this army like camo colour green, and nobody wants that in this collection, in this kit. So on it goes. Just giving it a bit dry with the heat gun. It does warp your paper a little bit, but I have to finish a layout in one sitting, otherwise I don't go back to it. And then I'm just going to add some of the water. So I just spray the water into my hand and then I flick it on with my fingers, leave it for a few moments, and then use a paper towel to soak up the colour. And you can see it just gives that little bleached look. Add in a bit more because they are water reactive, that's why they can do that. So anything water reactive you can do this little technique with. So it's all dry, coming back in. I'm going to have a play. So you can see putting the frames on there covers a big chunk of the colour and just leaves a little bit behind, which is a nice little touch of why we should do mixed media crazy, so that it just leaves that little pop on the outside and we have all the fun before we glue things down. So I'm going to use the word inspired just because it is inspiring to watch him play with just some random stuff and the way he enjoys himself. But also, where else am I going to use a word like that anytime soon? So I may as well use it while I think it works. And I'm just going to have a little play with what else I think is going to work. Decide where am I going to put the title, if I'm going to put it up on that top cluster or in with the photos or even down lower. Just having a little play with those distress edges just so I could have a bit of time to ponder and think. So I'm just using some double-sided tape to glue them to the frames and then some more double-sided tape to glue it to the paper. Just working out how it's all going to work, and in the end layering it like that so I can see that yellow word on the frame. And inspired is going to sit up the top. So just taking it off the paper and just working out how the scriptiness sits so that it is sitting properly and is legible. On it goes. Don't forget the dot for the eyes. And ta-da! So it doesn't even with that little bit of stuff, it's going well. It's one of those layouts that the pattern paper is nice and busy but not overwhelming, so that you don't need a copious amount of stuff on it. On with some embellishment. So if you've seen my prep video, you can see that I just quickly roughly cut out the embellishments, the printables, and then I fussy cut them as I'm adding to the layout to make sure I know if I want to border or not and how I want to cut it. Just having a little play, trying to find what I want and how I want it to work. Found this lovely little ticket, it says good stuff, and I thought that the colours just worked really nicely. Well, the colours in the whole kit work so well together, so it's really hard to say, like, to not be able to link them all up and make it work. So that's going to be a nice layering piece up there. I like this wood veneer that says yes, but I'm just not going to make it work. And then I found these little enamel hearts, and I'm like, why did I forget that I had them? I had them sitting under the floral embellishments and a few other wood veneer and stuff, so I didn't remember about them, and they would have worked so nicely on the past layout. I might go back in and put them on, but at the moment I have not. But I definitely pulled them out with the Distress Oxide, thinking that both of those things will be used on all or most of the layouts. And I love this word today, and I love the green. It just needed some green put somewhere, so I'm fussy cut it and trying to work out where it could go. And try a few places, but it just didn't work, so I'm just going to put it there so that I don't forget about it. Pull out one of these printable rainbows and a couple of these flowers, and I'm just going to quickly fussy cut them and work out where I'm going to put them. I originally thought I'd put them down there to the bottom right of the frames, so that's where I lay them, but as I go along I discover that to the left of the cluster is a much better idea. So here they go. Now I picked 3, so the pink and the dark blue are similar sizes, and the light blue is a little bit bigger, so that's why it's going on top of the cluster, and it'll be up on the fun foam so that it's on level with the frame. And then this rainbow is going to go up the top of that cluster and just finish it off really nicely. So I'm going to put that today tuck it in under the title, and that just gives it something to ground it. There we go. I'm going to commit to these flowers and the rainbow, a bit of double-sided tape and some foam tape. Sorry, wet glue and some foam tape. It's funny because I'm looking at it going, oh yeah, I could have just used double-sided tape, but I probably was thinking, just get them down. I know I want them there, so don't bother with double-sided tape, just get out the wet glue. So on it goes. I just love the way those 3 sit there and nicely nestled in together. Has a cool cluster. I'm trying to work out if I want an enamel dot there. Putting the rainbow there, making sure it has some foam tape so that it's on par with the frame. The photos, remembering that that's up on foam, on fun foam. No, they're not up on fun foam, just that the frames are chipboard, so there are a little bit of thickness to them. So just fixing up the title so that it is laid up, and just gonna, I pulled off one of those enamel hearts to work out where to put it, and then realized that I didn't staple or even adhere this cluster, so of course I ran out of staples, so I didn't even realize when I was editing that part. I put it like stars from the thicker sheet because it just adds that pop of that foil silver, or that iridescent, oh my gosh, it's getting late. Pick it up on fun foam, so that just gives some height to that cluster. And I just, when I was standing up and looking at the layout as a whole, the wedge at the top, so I'm going to put it down the bottom, and I just like the way that it nestles in under the frames. Just works really nicely. And I'm going to make sure I leave this today cluster embellished, and it's going to go there. Just play. So everything that's on there stays on there. I don't really add anything else in terms of embellishments. But I do add some more of the colour of the mixed media background, so I'm just making it flow a little bit. I'm using my paintbrush and just adding some watercolory edges to it so that it's not so constructed. And I do add some pink down the bottom, and that's going to be the end of the layout pretty much. But just make sure, if you're having a little experiment with your mixed media, that you really just enjoy it and go with the flow. However it works, you can make it work. you know, however it ends up, just make it work with your photo and your embellishments on top. So you can see here, you could always just use your paintbrush to make what you want it. You could definitely just put your cluster in down and then use your paintbrush to mix media on the edges and around it and make it look random without it being random. Anyway, so here's the close-ups and the full layout. Hopefully you've enjoyed this layout and the way it's come together and feel inspired to use some of your mixed media, whether it's from your kit that you got this month or from